Let me tell you something, every neighborhood's got that guy. You know who I mean. The one who clings to the HOA rule book like it's the holy grail. The guy who doesn't just follow the rules, he hunts with them. But in our neck of the woods, that guy wasn't just a nuisance, he was a problem. And not the kind you can just wave off at the next block party. Around here, folks called him Rick Halverson. Not his real name, but it'll do. Rick wasn't elected, nobody tapped him for duty. He just woke up one day, decided he was the law, and strutted down Alder Lane in a neon vest he must have bought online, clipboard tucked under his arm like a sheriff's badge. Always with his phone out, camera rolling, just waiting for anyone to slip up. To slip. Last week, Rick crossed a line. And buddy, once you cross certain lines with my grandfather, there's no walking it back. Let me set the scene. It's 5:30 in the morning. That weird hour where the world feels stuck between night and day. Everything's soft and gray. I'm in the kitchen sleepwalking through my cereal routine when I hear the creak of our back fence, that old wood moaning in a way that means someone's on it. Out on the porch, there's Grandpa bundled in his army jacket, hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee. He doesn't even look up, just mutters, "There he goes again." Didn't need to say who. And sure enough, I peek out and there's Rick scaling our fence like a third-rate burglar. Boots scraping, phone up, snapping pictures like he's uncovered some criminal evidence. He's zooming in on Grandpa's tomato plants neatly lined up red and green, as innocent as it gets. But apparently to Rick, tomatoes are a threat to the fabric of society. Let that roll around for a second. A 75-year-old veteran growing food for himself violation. And yeah, I could feel that heat in my chest. You know, the one when your hands curl into fists without even asking you first. I was halfway to the door, ready to unload every smart comment I'd been saving for weeks, but Grandpa just lifted a finger, slow, steady. Number patience. Then he grinned just a bit and said, "Let a fool talk long enough, he'll write his own ending." That was him. Calm, patient, the polar opposite of Rick's twitchy, power-hungry mess. It wasn't the first time. Rick had been poking around for weeks, caught him twice near the shed, rattling the door like he expected to find, black market shovels or outlawed fertilizer. Every time, same routine, Rick flashes that tight smile, says, "Just doing my job for the HOA." Only thing is, there's no job. Grandpa had already filed the complaint, sent the pictures, detailed it all. The HOA president, Marilyn Brooks, pearls pressed shirts, always a perfect smile, just waved it away. Oh, Rick's passionate. He really cares about our community. Passionate's one word for it. Obsessive, maybe. Power-hungry's even better. The HOA hid behind legalese. He's an informal compliance helper, whatever that means. Grandpa tried the sheriff's office too, but all they could say was unless we caught Rick red-handed, it was just our word against his. That's when Grandpa stopped arguing. Started planning. 3 days straight, he's in the garage door, cracked old country music, humming, me playing assistant, handing him wire cutters, looking up regulations. On day 4, something had changed. Our wrought iron gate looked the same, but not quite. There were new wires, nothing flashy, all by the book, low voltage, clearly marked with a big yellow sign, warning electrified gate. No trespassing. And like clockwork before sunrise, Rick showed up. Grandpa on the porch, rocking like nothing in the world could touch him, while I watched from the window, heart beating out of my chest. Rick climbs, muttering, phone-ready gloved hand, gripping the gate, snap. That jolt hit him like karma in a wire. He screeched high and panicked, tumbled back into the dirt, scrambling away like he'd been mugged by physics itself. Grandpa just rocked, sipped his coffee. "That's the sound of justice," he said, soft enough only I could hear. By noon, every neighbor knew the story. Rick's self-appointed HOA enforcer, limping down the lane, making a spectacle of himself. He told anyone who'd listen Grandpa had set up illegal traps, endangered the community. Problem was, everyone already knew Rick. They'd seen him measure grass, photograph kids' bikes, peek through curtains at night. The man wasn't enforcing rules, he was feeding something inside himself. And you want to know what's scary? People like that don't stop. They escalate. That's the part nobody tells you when you push back against someone obsessed. You don't get an apology. You get the next level. Rick doubled down. For 2 days straight, he circled our block in his beat-up pickup. Slow windows down, eyes glued to our driveway. Sometimes he'd park and stare. Other times he'd film, narrating like he was hosting some DIY crime show. Grandpa, he didn't even blink. Just rocked, thermos in hand. On the third night, I couldn't sleep. The air felt heavy like the whole block was holding its breath. Just after midnight, I heard the scrape of metal. I peeked out, and there was Rick Hoodie, pulled tight, flashlight in one hand, bolt cutters in the other, crouched by our gate. He wasn't here to inspect. He was here to break in. Before I could even whisper, Grandpa's voice cut through the night, low, steady. "Watch this, kid." He lifted a little remote thumb on the button. Rick clamped the bolt cutters, click, then zap. The gate buzzed to life, and Rick's body jerked like he'd grabbed a live hornet's nest. He yelped, dropped everything, slipped in the mud, and scrambled away, panic all over his face. Grandpa didn't move. Trespassing again, he muttered, then calmly raised his phone, already recording. Every second, every yelp, every muddy slip. Rick, hands shaking, dialed 911 so loud the whole street could hear. "This man's trying to kill me." Illegal electric fence, I was attacked. 5 minutes later, red and blue lights flooded the yard. 2 officers stepped out, hands near their belts, faces unreadable. Rick, muddy, sweaty, cradling his arm like it might fall off. Grandpa still in his chair, not a care in the world. "Sir, is there an electrical device on that gate?" one asked. "Yes," Grandpa replied. "Low voltage. Permitted. Clearly marked. Recorded." Then, without getting up, he slid over the paperwork and the phone, replaying Rick's whole escapade for the officers. They watched in silence, climbing bolt cutters, the shock, the panic. One looked up. "So you trespassed?" he asked Rick. "No, I was conducting an inspection for the HOA at 12:30 in the morning with bolt cutters." Other officer's eyebrow nearly hit his hairline. Rick's words tripped over themselves. He knew he was cooked. "Law's not complicated, not here. Criminal trespass, vandalism, attempted theft, and just for fun, filing a false police report." Out came the cuffs. Rick's voice went from furious to desperate in 6 seconds flat. "You can't do this. He's dangerous. He's a threat to the community." But nobody bought it. By then, half the street had come outside, pajamas, hoodies, everyone watching what they'd quietly wanted for ages. And then quietly, at first, they started clapping. Not a wild cheer, just a slow, relieved applause for Grandpa, the guy who finally said enough. Grandpa looked over at me, nodded once. Sometimes justice just needs a little electricity. Rick sat in the cruiser, sweat-soaked, staring at nothing. All that borrowed authority gone in a flash. The gate he'd tried to control had ended up controlling him. And as they drove away, it hit me, this whole thing wasn't really about offense. It was about what happens when someone mistakes tolerance for permission, when small abuses go unchecked so long that the abuser forgets the rules apply to them too. The next morning, the air felt different, lighter. People stood straighter, waved longer. For the first time in forever, nobody felt watched. This wasn't some wild HOA legend. It was a case study in how power works in small towns. Real authority comes from legitimacy, from consent, from being accountable, not from a vest or how many rules you can quote. Rick had none of that. What he had was a costume, something everyone put up with just because calling it out felt like a hassle. Here's what I learned. HOAs are supposed to maintain standards, not replace the law, and sure as hell not turn neighbors into deputies. When someone acts like an enforcer with no paper trail, no written power, that's not community. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. But more than that, it's a psychological trap. People like Rick don't start out extreme. They test you little by little until silence turns into a permission slip. That's why Grandpa's approach worked. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He documented, followed every rule tighter than the so-called enforcer ever could, and waited. He knew systems fail loudly when they're abused, but they fail quietly when you've got evidence. And listen, none of this was about revenge. Grandpa didn't want to hurt Rick. He just wanted him to stop. The gate wasn't a trap. It was a line in the sand, one Rick refused to see until it shocked him, literally and figuratively. So if you're dealing with a nightmare neighbor or HOA bully right now, here's my advice, straight up. First, know the rules better than the person twisting them. Second, document everything. Third, never meet obsession with emotion. It just adds fuel. And finally, don't mistake keeping the peace for letting someone walk all over you. Peace built on fear isn't peace. Rick thought he was protecting the neighborhood. All he was really guarding was his own ego. And when reality caught up, real law, real consequences, he folded in a heartbeat. That's why this story sticks with me. Not because of the spectacle, but because it shows how fragile fake power really is. So what about you? Ever had to deal with an HOA bully, a self-appointed enforcer, someone who thought rules only went one way? Did you stand up? Let it go, or did things go sideways before anyone stepped in? Drop your story in the comments. Read what other folks have lived through. That's how we learn. We're not alone. And if you got something out of this hit, stick around. Stories like these aren't just entertainment. They're a reminder that sometimes the quietest person on the porch is the one who really understands what rules are for.